Okay, a lot to do this week, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna be replacing our standard picket fence with a board-on-board fence with a nice top cap and trim. I'm gonna be going with pre-stained cedar material that I purchased from a local fencing supplier, and it was actually cheaper to get the material pre-stained than it was to get the material and stained separately. So definitely look into that if you're looking at replacing your fence. Now, we got really lucky with the previous owner of the house because he installed a concrete footer the entire perimeter of the fence, which is roughly 290 feet. And he also installed these 3.5-inch steel posts. So right off the bat, saving a lot of money because we're not gonna have to replace any of the posts. However, they will need to be extended in order to give the board-on-board fence the full support that it needs. And that's actually where I'm gonna get started. I first had to go around to all the poles and knock off the PVC cap that was placed on them. Now, unfortunately, all these poles are not cut to the same height. So what I did is grabbed a stick and cut it to exactly 73 inches and attached a tape measure to it so I could hold it next to the pole and very quickly read how tall each extension needed to be. Now, to actually cut the extensions, I'm going to be using my Triton multi-stand for support and a Milwaukee portaband to make the cuts. This portaband was really cool because I think most people are familiar with portabands, but this stand that Milwaukee produces turns it into a stationary unit. So that all I had to do was secure the piece of pipe and then make the cut. And when I was using this, I didn't apply much pressure. I would just let the weight of the tool more or less progress the cut for me. Now, of course, I'm using 3.5-inch diameter pipe since those are what my poles are already at. But if you have smaller diameter, then you can just find matching material. After I cut each extension, I would go ahead and place it on the pole it was meant for and just double check that it was to the height needed. With so many poles, it took me 3 joints of material to get all the extensions. I tried to find shade whenever I could and eventually even pulled up a step stool to rest my feet. Since I'm going to be welding these extensions on, I'm going to need access all around the post. So I grabbed my circular saw and cut a few pickets out of the way behind each and every post. Now, these poles are just painted silver, they're not galvanized. But with that said, I had to come through with a grinder and grind off some of the paint so it wouldn't contaminate the weld. But then I was able to start welding. To weld all of these extensions on, I'm using the Lincoln Electric Mig 210 machine. And I first tried to use a 10-3 extension cord, but it very quickly tripped the breaker. So I ended up going to the big box store and renting a generator for the day to run the machine off of. And even though it was kind of a hassle moving the generator and the tank and machine around, it worked great. With the help of a few magnets, I would hold the extension on the pole and then tack it in 3 different places. Then I would remove the magnet and finish off the weld on one side of the post. I would then move to the outside of the fence and weld the other side. To speed up the process, Cody would go through and grind all of the paint down for me so that I can come back and focus on the welding. So if you're going to be doing this to your own fence, I would recommend that you pay very close attention to starting fires. I ended up starting about 4 or 5 throughout the entire process. You can actually see one starting right there. We ended up keeping a bowl full of water on standby. To give the extensions a coat of protection, I gave them all a quick coat of paint. The colors don't match, but I wasn't concerned since I planned to put boxes around each post. So the previous owner used carriage bolts to attach the panel to these brackets, and I think it would take way too much work to back off all of the nuts and then try to shimmy the panel off as one unit. So instead, I'm going to be taking a shortcut. I ended up cutting the panels just right outside of the metal bracket. And I made sure to cut in between pickets so I wouldn't end up hitting a nail. Doing it this way, I still have to remove all the bolts, but instead of having an 8-foot panel to remove off 6 brackets at once, I instead have a 1-foot section to remove off 3 brackets. And this was definitely an easier and more fun process. Alright, moving on to the stringers. Unfortunately, my poles are not spaced exactly 8 feet apart, but instead they're closer to 93 inches. So I would take a measurement and cut each stringer to the length needed. To attach the stringers to the post, we're going with 1/4-inch lag bolts that are 1.5 inches long. We would first set 1 bolt in one side, then make sure that the stringer was level, and then continue running the rest of the bolts in. And just a quick tip, I saved close to $100 by purchasing the 700 lag bolts needed through a local supplier instead of the big box store. Okay, so now this is a really big job that I'm gonna have to break up over multiple videos. So stay tuned next week for part 2, where I actually finish the fence by putting up the pickets, the top cap and trim, as well as the boxes around the posts. So I will see you then. It's gotten up to 104 degrees this week, and Cody not only helped me lug all of my gear around while welding, but he was also kind enough to hold an umbrella over me to try and keep me cooler. I think I got a keeper.